Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi hoki ahau. Me te whai, ao ki te ao marama. Ti hei, mauri ora. Me mihi ka tika ki te atua, tīnā koe. Kia ranginui rawa, ko papatua nuku, tīnā kōrua, tīnā kōrua. Ka huri ki te whare e tūnei, tū tōnu, tū tōnu, tū tōnu. Ka rere ngā mihi ki ngā mate, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Ko tēnei te mihi ki te hunga ora, tēnā tātou. Ki ngā mana whenua o konei, kia kaitahu whānui, tēnā koutou. Ki ngā manuhiri tēnei, tēnā koutou. Ki oki hoa mahi, me tātou tauira, tēnā koutou. Nō reira, nō reira. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora tātou. Lovely to see you all. Very special evening tonight. So just briefly in that mihi, I mentioned this beautiful house, award-winning, which should never fall, given I've asked it to continue standing. But if it does, if there is an emergency, please just make your way out through the emergency exits, and there are loos out in the corridor if you need those during the evening. So warm greetings to you all. Ko Jessica Palmer tōku ingoa. I am the Deputy Vice-Chancellor External Engagement here at Ōtākau Whakaihu Waka, and it's my great privilege to lead the party, as we call this rōpū down the front, to honour David and to acknowledge this very special night. I also have the great privilege of having been the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Humanities for a wee while, and in that role was very closely involved with the College of Ed and with David and his work. And so it's lovely to be a part of this evening with you tonight, David, and to acknowledge your great work. So the order of proceedings is quite straightforward in a very traditional, formal, classic university approach. We all get dressed up, sit in the front, you get to enjoy things, and at the end we have some food. Sound good? All right. So we're all here for the main event, but before we do, we like to eke out every bit of glory for these events. So we wear fancy clothes, and I get to introduce the party. So we have the DVC Deputy Vice-Chancellor Pacific, our Professor Diane Sika-Pautanu. We have our Pro-Vice-Chancellor Humanities, Professor Hugh Campbell. We have the wonderful Emeritus Professor Jeff Smith, who was Dean of the College for some time, and his lovely wife, also an Emeritus Professor. Where is she? Lisa, it's lovely to have you both with us, so thank you. And then we have the wonderful Professor David Berg, Professor being the most important part of the introduction. Yeah. And then we have our Dean of the College of Education currently, Professor Viv Anderson. So it's lovely to have you all with us, and you will hear from several of them as we go throughout the evening. I want to also just make an important point of welcoming, I think, our most important guests here this evening, and that is David's whānau. So we've got Wendy. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the years of support that sit behind this particular evening. And thank you also to Tom and Maya. Lovely to have you with us. He's also got a few friends here in the crowd. Thank you too for coming. Thank you for what you mean to David and his life here and his role both at Ōtākau Whakaihu Waka and more generally in his life and his work and his friends and his family here in Dunedin. I also just want to acknowledge Professor Berg's father, who's joining us online from the UK, and it's lovely to have him zooming in, and I'm sure there are other family members and friends also zooming in, so thank you for joining us. So my role is both to congratulate David, to congratulate him on this most well-deserved promotion to Professor, but also to give you a bit of an indication of how special this is. And many of you will know this. It is considered to be the pinnacle of your academic career, and it's hard work to get there. It's really hard work to get there. So these are wonderful celebrations of academic life, but they represent years of work, years of calling and inspiration, and years of dogged commitment. The criteria for being promoted to Professor are worked through over years of many committees sitting around thinking about how we should reward and award and recognise our esteemed colleagues, and you have to achieve an incredibly high standard. We call it, anyone know the criteria? Come on, say it out loud, Professor Campbell. sustained, outstanding leadership and competence. Now, that is classic academic style, right? Let's eke everything we can out of every standard. And David has to show that across teaching, research and service in order to be promoted to professor. So it requires significant mahi. And so this evening is a recognition of a lot that goes in behind it. And it's a real privilege for us to hear what you've done over those many years and the contribution you've made to this community. I also just want to acknowledge the particular discipline in which you come from. Education is hard work. And it's particularly hard at the moment. It has been, it feels like, for the last 50 odd years, but certainly in these last couple of years with the change of government, education is always the one that takes the hit in terms of policy changes and people with potentially the right motivations, but who think it's very easy to make changes very quickly. And those of you who are teachers, who are colleagues in the School of College Education know that is not the case. And those of you who stand on the front line take the beating for that. And so David, in your role, where you have a particular role at looking at what's happening in schools, whether it's working or not, and so you're on the front line of this particular conversation that's happening in the public eye at the moment, I just want to acknowledge you, and I want to acknowledge your colleagues. So those colleagues here in the College of Ed, I want to thank you that you have chosen this calling. It is a calling. Educating our children is a calling, and it's an incredibly important one. So we stand with you and we acknowledge how difficult it is at the moment. So on behalf of the university, I would like to offer our sincere congratulations to you. This is a well-deserved promotion, and you ought to feel a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction in the work you've done. I also want to call you on and say continue that journey, continue that calling, continue to speak into what education ought to look like in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Continue to be a wonderful colleague in the college education, and thank you for your service to Ōtākau Whakaihiwaka. It is now my pleasure to invite Professor Vivian Anderson, and she will come and formally introduce you all to David, although I suspect, Viv, that these people probably know him quite well. But what will happen in the course of the introduction is you'll be blown away by just how much you learn about what David has been doing in the last few years. So thank you all. Strap in and let's enjoy the evening.
I ngā mana, i ngā reo rauranga tirama, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Ki ngā mana whenua o tēnei takiwā, ko Kaiterua Hiki, ko Waitaha, Kāti Mamoe rapu wai kai tahu whānui tēnā hoki koutou. Kia koutou, ko ngā whānau, ngā hoa, ngā whanaunga, ngā hoa mahi o Professor David Berg. Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai tauti mai. It's really exciting to see everyone here and to be here to celebrate with you tonight. So kia ora koutou and a very warm welcome to those of you who are here in person and online. And I know we have some people from far away joining us from camping sites and the sunny northern hemisphere. So we're not jealous or anything, but warm welcome to you. My name's Vivian Anderson and I have the privilege of being the Dean at the College of Education. So it's a real honour to introduce David to you, and I'll keep this really short because there's lots of people speaking and he's the star of the show. But just a very brief introduction. David began his professional life as a primary school teacher in Liverpool, England, and he has a very rich and eclectic CV, having worked as a social worker in a children's home in London, a camp leader in 1980s South Africa, a teacher in Nepal, a deputy principal in Liverpool, a tutor and later academic staff member here at Ōtākau Whakaihiwaka, and most recently as the head of our Educational Assessment Research Unit. David's CV demonstrates his deep practical grounding in education, community and social justice concerns, and his commitment to supporting others. David will tell you about his research, so I won't do that, but I would like to acknowledge him as a person and as a colleague. David completed his doctorate just after me, and we started working at the College of Education in the same year. And there are many things I could say about David. Research-wise, he's super versatile. So he's very comfortable and competent using both quantitative and qualitative methods, and really skilled at communicating research. One of the joys of my role is I get to read the teaching evaluations, and he's a beloved teacher. David is a brilliant teacher and a generous mentor of many people. For a time, he fulfilled the role of postgraduate coordinator, which is a really big job. And he's also successfully supervised many, many postgraduate students and supported many colleagues with both work and non-work matters. So in terms of the non-work related support, I'm aware, and I'm sure there's many other things, of David making coffee for colleagues in the morning, taking people kayaking, helping people move furniture in the weekends, delivering legal documents on colleagues' behalf. He works hard to get us interested in cold water swims, but he hasn't succeeded yet on that front. David took over leadership of our Educational Assessment Research Unit in 2020. And in this role, he's the academic lead on our National Curriculum Insights and Progress study. So for those of you who don't know about this study, it's the latest iteration of a nationally critical curriculum monitoring project funded by the New Zealand Ministry of Education. And Otago has held it for over 30 years. Since he took on this role, David has worked with his stellar leadership and research team to oversee the collection of curriculum outcomes data that informs our education system at a national level. And in this role, he also engages regularly with colleagues at the New Zealand Council for Educational Research, who partner with us on the study, and with Ministry of Education staff to communicate and guide the use of the data. Given that the latest iteration of the study was written to sit alongside a curriculum that was then changed, during the time David has been in this role, oversight of the Curriculum Insights and Progress study has been extremely challenging and complex work, and that's just reiterating what Jess has already acknowledged. Much respect to you and your team, David, for the exceptional work you continue to deliver as a collective in this regard. So those who are privileged to work with David know that he's extremely competent, very humble, we've been ribbing him all week about this, kind, professional, and insanely funny. Also not a person to get into a conversation with if you've got stuff to get done. But if you want a distraction, he's great. David is a much-loved leader, colleague, and mentor at Te Kura Ako Taitoka, and a fabulous academic citizen. Given his capacity to spin a great yarn, I know you're in for a treat. So it's an absolute joy to celebrate your promotion with you tonight, David. Homai te paki mo, Professor David Berg.
Tēnā koutou koutua, ko Milvana te mauka, ko Mezi te awa. Ko Ikaraki me Noraki ka whenua tupuna o tāku whānau, no Liverpool aho. Ko David Berg, toko e koa. Ko Wendy, toko hoa wahini. Ko Tom rau Maya aku tamariki. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou koutua. Welcome everybody. Kia ora ana. It's Cook Islands Language Week. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming. And thanks for those of you online. Thanks for those of you in the UK and Norway who've got up really, really early, or at least are telling me that you have. You know, I've got some special people who are zooming in, so thank you for that. Thanks, Jess and Viv, for such kind words. I mean, we really could have stopped there. That would have been a good way to end the evening. And we could have then got Jeff on. But thank you for all you said. And you know, thanks to Viv for encouraging me to apply for this position. You know, it's a real help. It really ties into this notion of self-efficacy, to have leaders who encourage you to do things. And you know, I've been really lucky since I've been at Otago, because Viv encouraged me to apply for my professor position. Jeff encouraged me to apply for my associate professor. Lisa, where's Lisa? Lisa encouraged me to go for senior lecturer. And actually, if I'm really honest, I needed those people to do those things, because I really wouldn't have applied, or I would have applied later. So I think that's a message to leaders for the importance of their role in doing those things. So I was asking people for advice on on what to put in an IPL. Got some very different answers. And I'm still really confused, so I'll go with what I've got and let's just hope it works. But I'm presuming that they can't take the role. You can't take it off me, can you? Okay. If you did, that was not usually okay. So I'll try hard then. My colleague, where is Mariana? Oh, there she is. So, Mariana wrote this beautiful whaka toaki for me, especially for tonight. So I'd been talking endlessly, probably, to Mariana about my family and my friends and how I understand I've got into this position. And she wrote this for me, and I hope I can do the te reo justice. It's on a slide, you can read it so you can tell whether... in fact, and you'll notice that the whare there, the longhouse, is actually a Norwegian one. And so it's not what you might expect with this whakatoki. Ko te tahuhu o tāku whare, ko nā po tokamanawa, kōkiri o tātou kia tau. And so you can see there that this is about, well, I'll just read this bit if I may. Just as the ridgepole is supported by the central pillars in the whare, my strength and my purpose are upheld by the people, the values and experiences that continue to support me. They're the foundation of everything I've achieved and everything that I continue to pursue. With their presence and their araha, their love, I'm able to move forward with confidence. And those around me may, sorry, I'm making a bit of a mess of this, may find peace, balance, and fulfillment in the work we do. So what Mariana, I think, captured there and what I was trying to say is, I'm going to be talking about self-efficacy. And it's really interesting that when we talk about self-efficacy, there's an awful lot about that that's not to do with self. It's to do with everybody else. We don't stand alone. Looking at people in this room, so many of you, I wouldn't be doing this without you in lots of different ways. One of the things I got in terms of advice was to thank people. So I started writing down all the people I should thank, and that was like a whole lecture. In fact, it was several lectures. So some of you got edited out, so so sorry about that. Let me just get some water. So I'm going to show you some family photos because it's my lecture. So here are some pillars of my existence. Lovely, wonderful people. None of them with us now. So this is a photo obviously from some time ago, and it's got, I'll introduce you as I know them. In the middle is Nanny Owen, my grandmother, my mother's mother. My mum's to our right of her, and my other nan, Nanny Berg, as she was known, is on the other side. And these really remarkable women have sort of held our family together, our wider family together. Nanny Owen was 44 when she had my mum, and Nanny Berg was 19 when she had my dad. And so Nanny Owen had two kids older than my other grandmother. And so, but these people, my grandmothers lived through difficult circumstances, which I haven't got time to talk about, but they showed remarkable strength. And what they sort of gave to our extended family through difficult, really difficult times, allows me to be here. And so Nanny Owen was very soft and cuddly and a proper old lady. Nanny Berg was tough as anything and put me in my place, but was wonderful. And there's my mum. And so I need to talk about mum. We lost her over 30 years ago. And she was just this remarkably kind, clever, I could tell you so much about her. But let me start with her. So she's a child in Liverpool during the war. The Blitz smashes the place to pieces. Thousands of civilians die. the docks are a real target. And, she talked about watching dogfights overhead at night, and she remembered seeing planes getting shot down over the city. She has all that experience. Her education's in tatters, and then she gets sent off to relatives in Wales, and she goes off to a Welsh village where they haven't had their education disrupted to the same extent, and they speak Welsh, and she has to sort of deal with that. She comes back to Liverpool, leaves school at 14, and then she sort of not had much of education. But if you met her, you never would have guessed, because she was smart, she was informed, she knew about politics, she knew about history. She did lots of night school courses, so she did hairdressing and cake decorating, and had a real thirst for knowledge. And, as I say, was a remarkable woman. But the thing that was really important to her was she wanted to give her kids better opportunities than she had. And she wanted to give us a sense of being able to do things. Here's another photo. This is Dad. I think it's the only time he ever wore that. This is my dad, Ron Berg. He doesn't dress like that a lot. Just shopping and no. That was him with relatives in Norway, and those clothes actually belonged to his cousin Steinar. But it was a very special time for our family. But Dad, like Mum, grew up in Liverpool during the war. He was 3 when war started. His dad, who was 22 at the time, got sent off and was, one of the first people to go away in the war. He was parachuted into France, ended up in Dunkirk, I think, in the water for 12 hours, waiting to be picked up. Developed respiratory problems that he had the whole of his life. And he was actually, he didn't live a long time, Grandad. And then he was sent to North Africa. And so my dad's this little boy in Liverpool with bombs going off and windows coming in. And then he lived with my nan in a bedsit for a while and things. And he leaves school, he has a short time as a printer. You might not like me telling you this, but I don't think he did very well. And then he joins the army, and he goes into a dozen intelligence tests in the army, and he just scores so highly, everybody's really, really shocked. So the sergeant major who gave the test apparently had offered everyone a packet of cigarettes and a beer if somebody got them all right, and apparently my dad got one wrong. And so that changed his life, and he went off to military intelligence and did some really interesting things. But like Mum, he ended up working with Mum at the city lighting department when he came out of the army. But they were both people who'd had a rough educational start in some ways, but were really interested and in the world and everything around them. And so that was the sort of world I came into, me, my brother and sister. I'm going to quickly mention them because I'll be in trouble if I don't. There's our wider whānau, our wider family. My older sister, she's 4.5 years older than me, incredibly capable person. She works in PR and corporate social responsibility, and I think what she does is she makes people look good who probably don't deserve it. Which probably got lots of experience trying to sort out the messes me and my brother got into over the years. So she's very capable and been a really big support to me over the years. And my brother Phil, who, if that photo up at the top, he's to my right. Phil ran pubs for a long time and has got these exceptional people skills, which came in really handy dealing with difficult people and drunks. And then happily he moved on a few years ago to working in residential care for young people with autism. And he's done an amazing job of that. I'm so proud of him. And more than that, him and his wife Sue have fostered for the last 20 years, and they've done a remarkable job. And they've brought these really wonderful people into our extended family. So I just want to acknowledge all that lot and the extended family and the ones whose photos didn't make it. So they're up there. But all that is sort of what's behind me. I also probably want to just mention 2 lots of people here. There's Wendy's family. I won't go on about them, but they're wonderful. And there's... They really are. I did used to call them the mafia, because when I started going out with Wendy a long time ago, because I could never quite work out all the cousins, and cousins felt more like siblings, and then there's our New Zealand friends. I just want to acknowledge you because we wouldn't have stayed without our New Zealand friends, and they are family to us, and I just want to recognise that. Okay, move on. Okay, and there's the nuclear family. There's our lot, and so Wendy. It's all down to Wendy. Wendy's Wendy's an ICU nurse. She's amazingly organised and bright and capable, and sort of manages to keep me in check. I'm very, very grateful for that, and she does it in a very generous way. And everybody who knows her knows that's true. I've often thought, if Wendy and I ever fell out, all my friends and all my family would be on her side. And Tom and Maya, have grown into such wonderful young adults. I'm so proud of them. It's good to see that you've inherited what Maya calls the crazy Berg gene. But we might hear a bit more about that later. So, recognising you guys. Okay, so they're the pillars. They're the pillars that Mariana was talking about, and there's more. But let's think a bit about teaching. This is I think a great quote from Parker Palmer. Good teaching comes from the identity and the integrity of the teacher. I don't mean only our noble features or the good deeds we do or the brave faces we wear to conceal our confusions and complexities. Identity and integrity have as much to do with our shadows and limits, our wounds and fears, as with our strengths and potentials. So it's our vulnerabilities as well as our strengths that I think for those of us who are teachers, and I'll argue in a bit that we're all teachers in a sort of way, it's that we bring. And I think my success in the classroom, and as a teacher, it comes from those places. I don't think I'm particularly good at lots of things, but actually, some of the experiences I've had have actually really informed my work, and I'm sure that's true for many of you as well. So it's true of my teaching. It's also true of the research that I do and the work I do. I'm really interested in how we can make things better. And I suppose I had somebody use the expression me-search, and how we use research sometimes to try and understand ourselves. And for me, some of the research I've been doing is trying to work out, how did all this happen? Where did I get to? So let's have a quick look at a school report. I don't know whether you can read that. Hang on a minute. Okay, I'll draw out some particular bits. His poor presentation and dreadful carelessness usually camouflage the creative content of his work. He's been lazy working from the Fletcher program this year. Fletcher was a maths program we were supposed to work independently on through the year, and there were too many people to talk to. Again, his presentation is careless and untidy. He has a good general knowledge and enjoys sharing this in class discussions. He doesn't, however, enjoy the written work that projects involve. I think my teammates might, Jenny. And I love this last bit. He seems happy in school in relationships with children and staff, but he doesn't often get excited about any of the curriculum. So those are the days when teachers could say what they thought. Anyway, I don't mean that just to... Okay, so things sort of got a bit worse after that, I've got to say. And so I went off to high school, and I could talk about some of those things and some of the things that happened. But, I ended up living a bit of a dual life. So on one level, I was in this home where we talked about stuff, and I really enjoyed ideas, and we talked about politics. I think when I was 15, I decided I wanted to be a Trotskyite, and my sister pointed out I didn't know what I was talking about, and so I changed my mind, moved slightly more to the right, not very far. But I lived in this world of interesting things, and me and my brother were fascinated by natural history and all sorts of things, but school just didn't quite work. And I felt, actually, to use a word from educational psychology, I felt I'd learned helplessness is a real thing. And so I could talk about ideas, but I didn't think I could do anything. And that extended across just about any discipline you could think of. I had this deep sense that I can't do it. So I sort of sabotaged my own success because it was actually less shameful than failing. So I can remember lads at school sort of joking about how I didn't care, when actually I think I probably did. It was, just what you do. And so I stayed off school when I could, and had some delightful times. My mate Degsy hi Degsy, I don't know whether you can see me, he's up. He said he was setting his alarm. I particularly enjoyed coordinating days off with Degsy all those years ago. But that was sort of my story, and then I'll talk a little bit about how that changed, because it really does fit into the sort of the research, and I think. So I'll come back to that. So I left school. I got a job, which was actually quite interesting because late 80s Liverpool was, it was a difficult time. And I got a job, and I worked with a guy who, in a bookshop, and the manager had left South Africa. He was a conscientious objector, and for obvious reasons, he was a white South African, got out of South Africa, very highly educated guy, had degree, I think he had a double degree in Russian and something else. And one day he gave me a copy of Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. He didn't have great people skills. Hope he's not listening. But he gave me a copy of Crime and Punishment, and he said, "This is for you. If it's too hard for you to read, don't feel obliged." He might have done that on purpose, actually, because I was like, "Oh, I want to read this thing." And I started reading Dostoevsky, and it just blew my mind. I don't know, for those of you who've read Crime and Punishment, what's the main guy called? Raskolnikov. Thank you. Raskolnikov murders people. I had this nightmare that I was Raskolnikov. I can remember sitting up in bed, sweating, thinking, "You idiot, what did you do that for?" And it really took me on. And it took me on this journey of reading other things and engaging with more and more complex ideas. This same guy was in contact with people in South Africa, and he organised for me to go and work for a church organisation running multiracial youth camps in South Africa. And they were doing this work it's apartheid, and they're bringing people together, doing this amazing thing where kids who'd never mixed before were suddenly going, "Oh, maybe we're not that different after all," And anyway, amazing time. And it was there that, again, I was exposed to ideas that were completely just blew me away. My sister's just been going through letters I wrote to my parents, and she's actually charting she said, "It's amazing how your views are changing." One of the first letters I sent home was I'd stayed with a family in Johannesburg, and apparently I don't remember this. This isn't how I remember it, but this is what the letter says. I'm saying to my mum, "It's not as bad as it looks on the media from the UK." Because I'm talking to people who are telling me, this isn't a problem. And then I meet these people, these amazing people. Some of those people ended up in prison and things, and they were, exposed me to a different world. They took me to places in the townships that completely educated me and changed my thinking. So they also, people I was talking to said, why have you not gone to university? And I don't remember before that thinking that university was something that I could do. And it was other people's, like promotion, Viv. It's like other people's perspectives that really helped to change the way I was seeing myself. So other people saying to me, "Oh, you could go to university," helped me to think that maybe I could. I will get on. So there I am. South Africa, decided that maybe I can go to university, maybe I can teach, maybe I can do things. But I still had some growing up to do. And so I don't know if you can see from that photograph, but I met these lads and we found this great river to swim in. And we're swimming in the river and you could jump in and get washed down and grab a branch and get out. You got out where it was all dark and murky. And we saw a sign on the other side of the river. So we swam to the sign on the other side of the river. And it said, crocodiles and bilharzia. So what do you do if you've got a frontal lobe? You panic. If you're a young guy or young person, maybe you swim back, get your camera, swim back across the river with your camera and get your photo taken next to the sign because everyone's going to be dead impressed. Yeah, my kids found that photo some time ago. Okay, so this is when good things started happening. So there's a photo of some of the people I was working with. And again, these are people I need to recognize. So between South Africa, I got back. I spent a year doing 2 A-levels so I could get entry to train as a teacher and to engage in teacher education. My sister helped me a lot because, you know, even some of my so I could think about things, but some of my writing skills and things were very poor. And my sister really supported me. Did a 4-year degree, and in the university space, I flourished because it was a place where we could talk about ideas. And, you know, and also what really helped was I crashed a moped and broke my wrist, had to buy a computer and started typing assignments. And so people, instead of seeing my horrible handwriting, saw writing. And again, so these people were giving me high grades for things, which again was changing the way I was thinking about myself. Landed a great job with these wonderful people. And John McCausland, I'm hoping he's watching. John was the head teacher or the principal of Booker Avenue School and was just this remarkable guy who is a remarkable guy. He's retired now, but supported, he understood some of the stuff that I'm researching just intuitively, I think. He built people up like no one I've ever seen. He built up his staff and he built up the children of the school. Remarkable guy. An example of the sort of person he was, I remember one of the cleaners wanted to visit her son in Spain and was worried about how she'd get to the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. John just said, "Oh, I'll take you," and just took her before work. For the principal of the school to be taking the cleaners to the airport, I thought was pretty special. Okay, so that's those guys. Who knows where this next slide's going to take us. Okay. And then, while I was at the school, John McCausland supported me to have a year teaching in Nepal. When I say teaching, it was more like having fun. Wendy was working in the leprosy hospital, actually doing important things, and I was in the village school singing 10 Green Bottles with Nepali kids. But we had an amazing time, and you know, John had really supported that. Lots of stories from Nepal, but I'll move on. John also supported me to have a 2-year secondment to Liverpool Hope University, where I was involved in teacher education. And it was at that point I started thinking, maybe I could even do a doctorate. Maybe that's possible. And at the same time I had itchy feet, and I was also thinking, maybe I could go to New Zealand and could that work? And Gerald Pillay, the Vice-Chancellor of Liverpool Hope University, had been at Otago. Some people will remember him. And I thought, he's the Vice-Chancellor. I think I really understood the role of the Vice-Chancellor, so I went and knocked on his door and said, "Hey, can I talk to you about doctorates in New Zealand?" And he was very, very gracious and said, "There's somebody you really need to talk to who's coming here soon. Gareth Jones." And so Professor Gareth Jones was a visiting lecturer, visiting speaker. And he said, "Come along to Gareth's talk." Gareth gave this beautiful talk about medical ethics. And it was not something I knew a lot about Gareth. And I sat there and I thought, I'm not going to go and talk to him at the end. I'll just say thank you because I don't want to look like I just came to talk about doctorates in New Zealand. And so I sort of on the way out, I said to Gareth, "Thanks very much, and that was great." And Gerald Pillay said, "You need to talk to Gareth." And I bought Gareth the worst cup of coffee imaginable in a very those horrible plastic flimsy cups, and talked to Gareth. Gareth put me in touch with Wing. Wing was really supportive, and then at the end of 2006 we came over, and I started 2007. Karen Pratt and Wing employed me as a research assistant. I got my doctorate started, had the wonderful Lisa Smith as my supervisor. I couldn't have had a better supervisor. You know, Lisa, how grateful I am. She kept me to task. All the faults that you're probably aware I've got, Lisa managed to sort of sort them out. But also believed in me. So you'll hear that what I'm talking about me in terms of people believing in me, but it's true of you. I hope it's true of you, and I hope we're all conscious of how we do this for other people. That our job is to be lifting other people up. Good thing about Lisa is, as Lisa, you said to me at the time, you get Lisa, you get Jeff. And don't need a photo of Jeff because we've got him actually at the front. And so the two of them have been really great mentors for me. So thank you guys. So I had an amazing few years working, as we've talked about already, different roles. Lots of people at the college have been such an amazing blessing, I'll use that word, have been so wonderful to me, and I can't name them all. For the last 5 years, but I've been working with this team, so Curriculum Insights you heard a little bit about. I'm going to be super quick. So for 30 years, as you heard, Otago has been running national monitoring in some form for the ministry. It's currently called Curriculum Insights, the Curriculum Insights and Progress Study. And if you haven't heard of that, there's probably a good reason, and that's because, I'll say this delicately, our reports aren't out yet, but they will be. They will be. There's just been a lot of political stuff going on. And in a different time, this is what my talk would be like. I'd be talking about some of the research we're doing. That's not possible at the moment, but I do want to recognize this incredible team of people. We have a shared leadership with amazing people, and they're sitting over there. But we also, the whole team brings leadership. The whole team bring different skills, and it's quite humbling to be with them because there's so much capability in the team. You sort of spend your whole life thinking, well, I can't do that. I can't do what Linda does. I can't do what Cable does. I can't do what Jill does. Really grateful for our partners at NZCR, and it's so lovely to have Charles here. We benefit so much from that partnership. And Mariana, so grateful that you've come down. But everybody, Jenny, I won't mention all your names because, so it's been a real privilege to be part of that team. Just to give you a very quick idea of the work that the team are doing. So it's about 160 schools a year that we're sending people out to. We're doing research. That's 6,000 students. And we're able to build a reliable picture of achievement. And the context in which achievement happens. Most importantly, I think for us as a team, we do that, we think, without actually causing any harm to anybody. So internationally, lots of things we know cause problems for learners. Our study is completely anonymous. So schools are anonymous, kids are anonymous. It's a sample, so we can say something about what's going on in New Zealand without actually putting it being a high stakes thing. I really better move on. I've got no idea how long I've been talking for. Okay, so this talk is about self-efficacy in educational settings. And there's a good mate of mine, Gareth, working with Tom when Tom was 5. I think that's an educational setting. I think, so I'm mostly going to be talking about formal educational settings, but I just encourage all of you, even if you're not a teacher or an educator, to actually recognize that we all do it, don't we? It's part of being human. We're learners, but we're also teachers. So recognizing that role. So the things I'm talking about, please try and apply them to yourself as much as you can. But I've been working hard, so it's your turn. Okay, so here you go, guys. It's a problem for you to sort out. Okay, you don't really need to do that. But I know some of you are going to be wrestling with it. So Simon, my friend, came up with this for me on Tuesday. I asked Simon for a maths problem that would get people thinking, because not that I wanted you to particularly do it, But I wanted you to think about your response to it. So some of us, I suspect, would have gone, I can't do that. Others might have hung in there a bit longer and gone, Others are probably ignoring everything I'm saying and still trying to fight with the thing. And so I think that's really interesting, because you've got beliefs about your ability to solve that before you even get to try and get to it, which would dictate how much effort you're putting into this. I can see some people still really staring at it going, so, don't look at that, look at me for a minute. So, in fact, no. So how about this situation? So imagine that you're on your holidays. Maybe you're in Central somewhere and you're with friends and they've got a boat, and they're trying to reverse the boat down a really steep boat ramp. And it's horrible. There's kids wandering around, it's busy. We can all picture it, can we? Picture the scene. And your friend, not that any of my friends would ever do this, but just imagine, your friend gets out of his ute, gets the keys, throws you the keys and says, you do it. So can you imagine yourself in that situation? I wonder how many of you go, all right, and jump in the car and reverse the... How many of you know for sure those keys would be going right back at that person really quick? Because there's not a hope that you would be reversing. And so this is another one. So there'd be reasons why you'd be thinking those things. I know one of our colleagues who's not able to be here is cooking a meal at this moment for 12. She's got a family gathering and there were 12 people coming. What if you're asked to put on the spot and you're going to be cooking a meal for 12? You know, some of you like, yeah. Others, not so much. So what I'm trying to do is to think about those beliefs that you hold about all different things. We could do a big list, but the question I sort of want you to think about is, where do I get the evidence from about my beliefs about what I can do? Let's look at this slide. So that was a photo I took in Nepal, so there is a Nepal connection. But you can see there's a chain around the elephant's foot, which doesn't help the metaphor I want to use, but they are elephants. And so the metaphor I want to use, you'll have heard this, I'm sure, but there's a story that if you take a baby elephant and you tie a rope around the baby elephant's foot and to a stake, the baby elephant will push and pull and try and get away, but eventually learns that they can't escape it. And then as the elephant ages and gets strong, gets to be one of the biggest, most powerful creatures that we know of, it can still be tethered by this little rope because it's learned so powerfully that it can't do anything. I think that's true of lots of our learners. It's true of lots of our school leavers. It's true of lots of our friends. It's true that there's a whole heap of people out there who think they can't do things when actually they can. And I think that's a scandal. I think that's a terrible thing, that there's people with potential who can do things and act in the world who believe they can't. And I think it's our job as educators, for those of us who are, to actually do something about that. And that's why I'm interested in self-efficacy. So, well, let's think about what it is. So there's a few things of what it isn't. So we can think about ability. So let's think about that maths problem. There's a number of you in the room who can solve the problem. We could work out your actual ability, and there's some of us in the room who probably couldn't. Our study works really hard. My colleagues work really, really hard to get a very accurate sense of what children can do. Ability might not be the best word, but what's actually the truth? But it's very, very difficult to get to that. And then there's this notion of perceived ability. And perceived ability as well, you know, in our studies and NIMSA, we can see there's lots of people, for instance, who say they can't do maths. But actually, when they do assessment tasks, it tells a different story. So there's your perception and ability are not the same things. They're often, and we know that they can go the other way as well. Sometimes we think we can do something and it doesn't quite work out. What self-efficacy is even more finely honed than that. It's about your belief about overcoming a particular challenge. or situation. It's about, bringing what you have to the situation. Can you do it? And before I get to my criticism, the important bit is this all speaks to agency. It all speaks to the notion that, well, if you're somebody who can do something but you don't actually do it, it's pointless. I know that I can see that there's people in the room from all sorts of different professions. People I know who've got really high skills. Now that's like, let's imagine that they have those skills but they don't do anything with them. One of the reasons people might not do things with skills is or with ability is because they don't believe they can. So I think if we want agency to happen, if we want people to be able to do things with their lives, to be able to act and to change their circumstances and do things for their communities, it's all we need to really focus on their self-efficacy. So I'm sure he didn't really say this, but there's a quote from Henry Ford that says, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. And makes sense, doesn't it? It sort of makes sense. It's one of those things, it was sort of quoted in the Reader's Digest that he said it, and there's no real evidence he did. But it matters because let's imagine these children who think they can't do maths, but they can. Are they going to try? Are they going to take opportunities that come their way? Are they going to make choices around those things? We did some work with Professor Einar Skalvik at NTNU in Norway, and we were looking at people's choices of initial teacher education programs, and we found a couple of things. We looked at the reasons they were coming in, and it was really good to see altruism was why they wanted to be teachers. You hear people saying all sorts of nonsense about why people teach, holidays, all that sort of stuff. But actually, people go into teaching because they care. That's the big story. But caring isn't enough. You've got to feel like you can do the thing. And we also found these were people who believed that they could work with young people and children. Obviously, once they're in, they face challenges as well. Jeff and Nicola Beatson did some work as part of Nicola's PhD, where you could see that the self-efficacy beliefs of accountancy students here at Otago predicted their success, and it predicted it more strongly than their prior achievement and failure rates. So that belief really, really mattered. Another thing that really makes it, I think, gave me pause for thought was Dan Pratt, a PhD student, again, Jeff and I worked with. And Dan was working with school children with mathematics. And what he saw was the kids with the high self-efficacy were completely focused on the problem, whereas the kids with the low self-efficacy were focused on themselves. And that's really interesting. And let's go back to the trailer and down the boat ramp. If you've got high self-efficacy, you're focused on everything about, you're not thinking about yourself, you're doing the job. If you've got low self-efficacy, you're worried about what people think, you're thinking, can I do this? A lot of your sort of cognitive resources is engaged in actually thinking about yourself. And so what self-efficacy can do is actually free you from yourself so you can get on with the jolly task. And so this notion of persistence in the face of failure, I think is really, really important because we learn through failing. And if we stop when we fail, then the learning doesn't happen. I've been so encouraged talking to colleagues at the college about this notion of self-efficacy. And so many of us, and I include myself, will talk about having low self-efficacy. But I want to encourage my colleagues that we're showing up and we've actually got enough self-efficacy to be here and to do it. And so I think it's important that self-efficacy doesn't feel nice. It doesn't mean that you don't find it hard, but it means you can keep on pushing through and that you recognize it. You can pick yourself up when you fail. Okay, I'm going to have to go really fast. A sort of a part of self-efficacy we've been really interested in is teacher self-efficacy, which is a big topic on its own. And some really interesting research around teachers with higher self-efficacy it relates to really important outcomes for kids, for students. And so students tend to do better when their teachers are efficacious. Again, I think it makes sense, and be more motivated. Teachers with high self-efficacy are more satisfied in their work. There's a whole well-being scale relationship with that, and they experience less burnout, which again all makes sense, I think, to me. The way they actually teach is different. They're more inclusive, they're more engaging, and Pearl Wong, another PhD student who I know is going to watch, so hi Pearl. Pearl looked at Malaysian teachers, and you could see a relationship between teacher self-efficacy and coping with change and new practices, which at this time could be really important in education. And a gang of us from the college, we looked at, used NIMSA data to look at teacher self-efficacy and pedagogical approaches, teaching practices. And we could see a relationship between the teachers with the high self-efficacy were doing the things that make that helps children learn. They were the practices that they were involved in. So there's lots of reasons why we want to build not just our learners' self-efficacy, but our teachers. So let's have a quick think about where it comes from, what the sources of self-efficacy are. Now, in the literature, there's 4 sources, and we've got decades worth of this work. And I'll talk through each of those sources in a minute, but that's the established work, and we've been thinking about that. I've got some work underway at the moment, and all I can say is it's sort of underway. And I can't say it. With Mariana, we've just had a wonderful time working up north with Māori educators, and we're going to be doing some more work here very soon. But talking to these people, we started to talk about what self-efficacy and its sources might look like from Te Ao Māori perspectives. And it was wonderful, wasn't it? A very special time. But one of the things I found interesting was, for me as a non-Māori person, is so many of those things made me think as well, that sat outside of those 4. So for example, well, I've talked about my ancestry in a way already. So the notion of whakapapa makes sense to me, that the people who came before me. Wairua as well, I mean, sort of spirituality, my faith, these things have all shaped who I am. And so it makes perfect sense for those things to influence my self-efficacy. And so this is a work in progress. We'll keep you informed, but I just wanted to signal it. I think, Mariana, you said it's like you said it nicer than this, but you said it's like a partially weaved mat. Yep. Okay, so mastery experiences. So this is the most powerful thing we can do to support people's learning. There's nothing's going to beat this. It's a picture of Tom and Maya on a sailing course, and that sailing course was really well organised, so that we started off doing easy things and got progressively more difficult. So we were allowed to succeed, but they were genuine tasks. Tom and Maya did better than me, I've got to say. So being allowed to repeat successes is a really powerful way to build people's self-efficacy. Wendy in ICU told me that when new nurses come, they'll obviously give them some of the easier patients to begin with, and they'll repeat it so those people get the chance to really reinforce their skills before they move on to something else. But failures early really undermine people. So you can cope with a failure once you're good at something and you've got this sense of your own self-efficacy. But actually, if you haven't got strong beliefs and then you fall over, then you're going to be forming. And this is, I think, really, really important for those of us who are teachers, that we actually give people the right tasks at the right time. And that's the same, it's true of us at university. I know we do that. We try to give people tasks that they'll build their competence over time. I can see Alex up there, and I'm very conscious of early childhood, doing really important work in building young children in the sense of their capability. What we see in the data that we have, particularly from NIMSA, and maybe we might see it in the data that we can't talk about, is that as kids get older, they get progressively less self-efficacious. So stuff to think about there. Vicarious experience, hugely important, not as important as mastery. Two things going on with those photos. Top one, there's me, my bike's 10 years old there, that was 20 odd years ago, with Tom. Last year, Tom rode the length of New Zealand on the same bike. And he did the Tour Outer Row on my old bike. And I don't know, but maybe seeing his dad riding bikes made Tom more likely to ride bikes. I'm not taking the credit for Tom's ride because I took him to the shops. But you might see the point. And underneath there's me when I graduated with Maya. She didn't know, but she was my bodyguard at that moment because I felt so uncomfortable. I was going, "Oh, you come with me," you know. And she was holding my hand. But she said to me afterwards, she said, "I wonder what I'll do my doctorate in." Would my mum have said that? Would my mum have been wondering how old were you, Mike? Can you remember? Well, yeah. Would other people be asking that question? And so having people you can see do things is really important. Not everybody has the opportunity, though, to have a parent who's walking in there. So the rest of us need to think about how we're going to do those things. So we need to think carefully about putting role models in the way of people so they can see people like them succeeding. It's really, really important. Maybe I'll stop there on that slide, but there's it's really powerful that you see people. And sometimes you don't want to see experts, you want to see people who are just a bit beyond you. There are studies to back that up, but I won't. Okay, social persuasion. Again, I don't know what that conversation's about. I didn't show the kids any of these photos, but I thought, well, why ask when you can just do it? But you know, it's often called verbal persuasion. It's much bigger than words. We've all had the look, haven't we? The look that sort of puts you in your place. The look that says, "Are you sure? You're really going to do that?" You know, and so how we communicate to people is really important. And I think that there's ways that us as teachers can really think about careful ways of doing that. But actually, just even socially, I think we all carry a responsibility to think about how we're communicating to our friends, to our children, to our colleagues, because actually, whether we like it or not, this is a big source of our self-efficacy, and it can really knock people. Okay. Oh, the last one I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about it, but it's just not very much. I want to think about media. Think about what media tells people about people like them, the stories that it says that might give you information about what people like you can do. I think that's a really important idea. And just before Charles and I were talking about systems as well, Charles and Jenny have been doing some really important work with the ministry. And part of it's looking at benchmarking and things like that. And so actually how we set up our education system so people fail, get grades, all those sorts of things, it's really, really important. So we need to think nationally about our systems and think about the message that it's given people, because on one level you might say, well, people need to know. They need to know exactly where they are. And yes, we need accurate information. But actually, how that's handled is super important. Okay, so there's lots of work to be done there. I'm nearly done, guys. Physiological states. There's Maya. Maya skis well, and I don't. But I wanted to think about that photo I used, because can you imagine, some of you will ski, some of you won't, but let's imagine, put yourself in the beginner's mind. Even if you ski, imagine you're having your first go, and you've got lots of warm clothes on, and you're getting hot and uncomfortable, and it's, you know, you're getting falling over, and your body's going to be giving you messages. You're going to be feeling hot, uncomfortable, sick, all sorts of things. And it's easy to interpret those messages as meaning something different. It's easy to interpret them as failure. part of being human is to experience these sort of physiological states. And it's really important to think that it's actually not the feelings themselves that should be giving us self-efficacy information, telling us about our competence, but actually how we interpret them. I would suspect, so these guys here look terrifyingly competent to me. I was in the next room thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to give this talk. And they all look like, do this all the time. And, and they probably do. But all of us who spend time lecturing or being up in front of people, we all know what it feels like to be nervous before you go. And there's two stories you can tell as you come up onto the stage. You can say, well, my hand's trembling, my voice is dry. I shouldn't be here. I need to go somewhere else. Or there's the story that says, my hands are trembling, my voice is dry, my heart's beating, I'm up for this. I'm ready to go. I needed to be taught that. It was actually engaging in this theory that helped me go, oh gosh, those feelings don't mean, they're not telling me I'm inadequate. They're just part of being human. And I think we need to be having those conversations about discomfort and just see that as a normal part of learning. We should teach it explicitly. Okay, I think it is time for me to bring things to a head. So self-belief doesn't necessarily ensure success, but self-disbelief assuredly spawns failure. I think there's a challenge, I hope, for everybody. I want you to think about yourselves. Maybe think about the things that you don't do, that you believe you can't, and is that true? And what evidence was that really based on? But my big challenge is for the people that you love and the people that you care for and the people that you engage with and the people that you work with. Are you building up their self-efficacy? Are you building up their self-efficacy, their capability, and their agency? Whew. Thank you very much.
It's an honor to have been asked to speak representing Dave Spano tonight. And I share this honor with Dave's doctoral mentor, the relentlessly wonderful Emeritus Professor Lisa Smith. For those folks listening in Liverpool, the role of the speaker representing the whānau is perhaps maybe poke just a little bit of fun toward the IPL speaker. And so I'll try to do that. It didn't occur to me when I agreed to do this thing that I'd be following Dave. You never want to do that. So as you know, Dave is from Liverpool. I've never been to Liverpool, so my image of it is partly an amalgam of old movie clips of the shipbuilding docks during the war, but mostly my image comes from Dave's many, many stories of his childhood. The picture of his mom and his grandma's, that's my image of Liverpool as it is today, all right? I suspect that these stories may be a bit embellished, especially with regard to the hardships he endured as a callow youth. So here is my picture of the Liverpool that Dave grew up in. It's somewhere around the 1930s, and it's all in black and white, except for a few areas like Nanny Berg's house, which is still in sepia tint. Everybody works at the docks, and they are always building the Titanic. It's bitter cold, and the sun never shines, which is why Dave likes Dunedin. The only source of heat is burning dried peat, and on special occasions, coal. They eat pasties filled with animal parts left over from making spam. Dave and his mate Degsy carry heated rocks in their pockets to keep warm as they walk along the wrong side of the railroad tracks on their way to school. The only toy they have is a large barrel hoop that they hit with a stick as they dream of one day becoming Peaky Blinders. I don't even know what that is. When they arrive at school, they are immediately beaten with a switch by a nun in anticipation of them not having completed their homework. This is remarkable because they don't go to a Catholic school. The headmaster hired out an off-duty nun just for Dave and Degsy. I find the concept of an off-duty nun to be comedically appealing. It is in this setting that I am imagining that right now, somewhere in Liverpool, Dave's family and his one friend are huddled around a coal fire in a pub, having just finished their shift working on the Titanic. And they are live streaming this talk through Bluetooth into a fuzzy black and white television set with rabbit ears, when in walks Ringo Starr, who takes a quick squiz at the set and exclaims, "That's our Davey, isn't it?" I apologize for my attempt at a Liverpool accent. I don't speak Scouse. As a Yank, I learned everything I know about British accents from watching Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. Now, for all the principals, deputy principals, and teachers who had Dave as a student back in the day, I can only say, yes, it's the same David Berg. Okay, Jess Palmer told me they only had 2 minutes of jokes, so now I have to get serious. I'm here with Lisa, representing Dave's whānau. His dad, his late mom, his siblings and their spouses, aunties and uncles, nieces and nephews, and all of Wendy's family as well. Along with Diggsy Crosswaite, I just lost my place there, sorry about that, and Dave's other mates. Lisa and I are so deeply honored to be considered by Dave and his family to be one of you. Believe me when I say we are as proud of Dave tonight as we can possibly be. In New Jersey, we would say we are kvelling. If you have a Jewish friend, ask him what that means. And we do so along with Dave's incredible family, the lovely, compassionate, and long-suffering Wendy, the amazingly accomplished and vivacious Maya, and my mate, the ingenious and indomitable Tom. Aroha Nui. We are so fortunate to be part of your lives, and we share in your joy on this great occasion. Being a faculty member in a college of education at a major research university is an incredibly challenging task, but it is one that Dave lives up to in every respect, every day. One quick anecdote, and then I'll bring these horses back into the corral. A few years ago, Dave and I were co-teaching a paper called How People Learn. At the end of the final lecture, a student came up to me and said that he really enjoyed the class and that he was now thinking of becoming a teacher. And could he ask me some questions about the profession? I said sure, and we sat in the front row of the College of Education auditorium and chatted. And after a few minutes, I said, hey, you know, Dr. Berg can probably give you better insights than I can. I called Dave over and asked him to talk with the student. Instead of sitting next to the student as I had, Dave crouched down right in front of him so that he could look directly at him eye to eye. I'd show you how to do that, but then you have to get like 4 people. And he asked the young man what he was passionate about, what his experiences were working with children, and did he value service over income? As I observed the interaction standing off to the side, I thought to myself, I am watching a real master here. He has made the kind of connection with this student that I could only ever hope to do, and he's done so in an instant. Just watching was a peak experience for me. And that student is now deputy principal. I looked him up today. To finish, I have to say that I have a special kinship with Dave's father, Ron. I feel a special kinship with Ron, whom I've never met. In some respects, I feel like you handed him off to us when the family moved to New Zealand. And you had the hard part. By the time he got here, almost all the rough edges had been knocked off. What an amazing job you and Dave's mom have done. We've all benefited from Dave's insight into teaching and learning, his world-class wit, his insightful approach to addressing the really hard and meaningful questions in our field, his dedication to improving the lives of children, and what I believe to be his superpower, his ability to see the good in everyone. And so, let's be tough. Speaking for Lisa and me, let me say, thanks for sending him along. We know of no finer person in this world than your son, Dave. Thank you very much.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, ko Hugh Campbell toku ingoa. I'm Hugh Campbell, I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the Humanities. I have a slightly strange role in these proceedings. It's got some official title, but in reality, I am the person sent out in case the candidate has frozen, gabbled through their speech, and we have to flim-flam for about 10 minutes to allow the sausage roll warmer and the staff club to come up to temperature at 6:30. This is the opposite scenario. So I am now turning to page 2 of my talk. But Dave, something very important has come up, and I have to have an answer to this. Now, do not think that the rest of your professional career hangs on your answer as a Liverpool lad, as a true Scouser. I got to say, it takes true self-efficacy to hang in there as an Everton fan. Okay, I'll just recover there for a second. Actually, another thing, I'll say credit to you. Of many IPLs I've been to, this is the first one where I've heard the Reader's Digest cited as an authoritative source. But you've got the Reader's Digest, the 1970s equivalent of the internet. Seriously though, if something I'd learned about self-efficacy, this would all be going a lot easier, I think. At the beating heart of this IPL, David's life story has been told in a very particular, familiar style for this kind of event, giving all the credit to a range of other people, the people who he had a chance to grow up with, to study with, to be led by, and who have been part of the teams and networks within which David has been both a team member and leader. I want to take that acknowledgement one step further. All these people are indeed important in an academic's career, but I want to particularly acknowledge David himself. Everyone who knows and works with this person seems to really like him. They know how dedicated he is, how smart he is, and the sheer number of people who have come tonight speaks volumes to the esteem and affection with which Dave is held in his community and by his family. So, on behalf of the leadership of the university, get to the official part, David, I congratulate you on the attainment of our highest academic office, full professor at the University of Otago. I congratulate your family and your wider community of scholars, the treasured institution of Eru that you have led, and the College of Education as a unique site of learning. As a representative of the university leadership, I am proud to welcome you officially to the ranks of the Professoriate, and for us now to be considered your peers. And to symbolise this transition, I'm hoping under the table we have a gift. Please join me in congratulating again Professor David Berg. Now let us head to the staff club. You're all very welcome for some slightly charred sausage rolls.